What's going on, guys? Today we're talking about the secret to glute training. So a common misconception that I see with involving glute training is that you need to drive a lot of external rotation. What a lot of people don't realize is that when you drive so much external rotation during your glute exercises, you end up chronically shortening the glute. So it's not going through its full length and tension while it's activating. And then number two, you'll eventually start to drive shape changes at your pelvis, which is then going to further inhibit the glute, but also can cause issues at the SI joint, back, or even just the hip itself. And this is stuff that can happen down the line. So what's really important when you're trying to train your glutes is we need to understand, number one, the anatomy behind them and where their origin and insertions are, so we can understand what kind of motions we need to elicit in order to get full length and tension on the glute. So let's start with that. Here we've got complete anatomy open, and we're going to take a look at the major glute muscles that people train, which is again the glute max, glute med. The glute max is attaching to from the ilium down to the sacrum, coccyx, and then it inserts onto the gluteal tuberosity of the femur. We've got the glute medius right here, which is a little deeper to the glute max. The glute med is strictly on the ilium itself, that iliac crest. You can see that the glute med is strictly on the ilium itself, and again, it's attaching to that greater trochanter of the femur on the lateral side. So that's your standard, in case you don't know, that's your standard hip abduction machine at any commercial gym where you're sitting there and your legs are going out like this. That would be an example of glute med work, if done right. And then your glute min as well, but similar idea, it's abduction, so we can get both of them. But the main thing is, if you pay attention to where are they located, where are they attaching to, and you'll see that here. So what happens when we externally rotate? I've got a pelvis here. So look at this pelvis, and imagine that what's on screen here, you see where the glute is, the glute max. You can see that you can imagine it's running from here all the way up the iliac crest. And what happens is when we externally rotate so much, again, this guy's not going to show it too much, you're essentially shortening this area. When you externally rotate, that outflares the ilias, okay? It's outflaring them, compressing back here. It's causing posterior compression at the pelvis. So that's closing down space on this side of the pelvis. It's closing down all this space where that glute max is originating. Again, same with the glute med. And you're essentially shortening the muscle. Again, that doesn't mean external rotation is a bad thing. It's just if you're only training through external rotation, like putting a band around your knees while you squat or putting a band around your knees when you RDL, whatever, you're driving more external rotation, that's great, but that will over time cause shape changes at the pelvis, which is going to close down this area here where these glute maxes are, and they'll get chronically shortened. And so over time, you're not getting nearly as much length and tension as they would truly need in order to get good growth. But number two is, over time, again, you're causing shape changes at the pelvis. That's closing down space at the SI joints. It's causing all kinds of problems. It's causing problems with your digestion. It's causing problems with the TLF, the thoracolumbar fascia here, SI joint, low back. You essentially start to lose movement options, slowly but surely, at your pelvis, and then that will travel up to the thorax and everything else, but we're not talking about that today. What we're talking about right now is how can we train the glutes in the most efficient way possible, getting the most amount of tension on the muscle itself. What we need is, if you're catching on, external rotation is going to close down that space. So what we need to focus on is internal rotation, okay? We need internal rotation of the hips, or the femur really, to drive the ilium anterior, and it's going to create space for essentially posterior expansion of the pelvis, okay? What that's going to do is, again, look where the glute max is originating, where it's inserting. That's going to create space along here. It's going to stretch all the fibers out of the muscle. That's going to get you true length and tension under load for the glute. It's the same thing for the glute med. Let's take the glute max out for a sec. Again, the glute med is running on that iliac crest there. If you are externally rotating so much, You're shortening the distance here. That's outflowing the ilium over time. It's just closing down space on this poor glute med. And it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So what do you need to do? Like, let's say you're doing a hip hinge. So you're doing an RDL, very common for glutes and hams. What you need to do is you need to drive internal rotation as you descend, or on that eccentric. That's, again, it's going to lengthen the glute max, or the glute, all the glute muscles really. And then you're going to get full length and tension there. When you come up, so the concentric is then where you can drive some of that external rotation to close that space. And then again, you're going through that full length and shortening of the muscle, okay? So here's a good example of good hamstring work and glute work. So this is my lifter Paige. What she's demonstrating for us right now is a stiff leg deadlift. And I've instructed her to really drive down with her big toe and her heel. If you watched our first video ever on this channel, you'll know that that is encouraging pronation. And what that's doing is that is allowing us to get internal rotation up the chain and good anterior pelvic tilt bilaterally as she's hinging, which is, again, what you need when you hinge. And that is lengthening the glute fibers that are attaching up on the iliac crest, down her sacrum, all the way into that, that gluteal tuberosity of her femur. She's just getting full length on those glutes. She's also getting a really good stretch on her hamstrings as well, especially that proximal hamstring. So all in all, this is what you need to be focusing on if you're struggling with your glutes. This is how you get a full length and tension on the glutes. Let me show you the actual reps while I'm talking. Again, she's focusing on big toe and heel. Because it's a stiff leg deadlift, there's that minimal knee flexion, minimal wedge. We're just kind of driving through the posterior chain. And so these, with a strong focus on internal rotation for her posterior chain exercises, have really blown up Paige's glutes as well as her hamstrings in the past couple weeks. Yep, she's fighting through it, but this is what we're looking for, right? Stiff leg deadlift is an example of a hinge movement, keeping that pronation. She's avoiding supinating right away, keeping that big toe and heel down, again, because that's going to drive that internal rotation and that anterior pelvic tilt that we need to lengthen all these fibers, okay? So bottom line, incorporate more internal rotation stuff into your hinges and your glute work, hamstring work, okay? It's going to change the game. Too much external rotation is killing your glute gains. If you enjoyed these tips and you learned something new, if you're looking for any help, feel free to reach out. I've got my Calendly link in the video description. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned something, and have a great day.